Help support Friendo Club by going to patreon.com/Steven Larson or clicking join at youtube.com/Steven Larson. Access to bonus episodes, question threads for the Going In Raw podcast, and entry to our monthly wrestling predictions challenges. Join the Friendo Club today. Hey, Friendo, Steve here.
And Larson.
And welcome back to Going In Raw, the only pro wrestling podcast you need to be listening to. Heavy day of news today, Larson, on today's news brief, because it seems like all that accountability, like real world accountability, not just, hey, let's settle this lawsuit accountability, but like criminal charges. Looks like Vince McMahon might be facing them at some point. All the fallout from the Vince McMahon allegations are starting to sort of percolate here, Larson. What's the latest?
So let's go back to August of 2023, where WB revealed in an SEC filing that, quote, federal law enforcement agents executed a search warrant and served a federal grand jury subpoena on Mr. McMahon, Vince McMahon. A new report from Wall Street Journal today states that the warrant subpoena that were issued were in conjunction with the federal investigation into Vince regarding allegations of sexual abuse and sex trafficking, including the allegations made in the lawsuit filed last week against Vince McMahon. The Wall Street Journal story detailed, quote, the grand jury subpoena described to the Wall Street Journal offers the first window to the investigation, which began in 2022. The Journal reported in 2022 that McMahon had made payouts to several women who accused him of sexual misconduct while he was CEO, and that prosecutors were investigating the payouts. Subpoena also sought communications between McMahon and these women, including Grant. So there's 5 women named the subpoena. A WB contractor who Vince allegedly sent unsolicited nude photos to. Former WB wrestler who Vince coerced into oral sex. Former WB referee Reader Chatterton who accused Vince of rape. A spa manager who accused Vince of assault at a California resort, and a former WB employee who was demoted after she broke off an affair with her then boss, head of talent relations, Shawn Laurenitis. So, as you mentioned, it appears there is at least an ongoing investigation into Vince's misconduct.
Yeah.
From federal authorities. And you just got to hope that some accountability. He is facing some actual consequences.
Yeah.
Due to what he did.
Yeah. I was, I can't say I was shocked or surprised really, but when we first got a hint that there were investigations into Vince McMahon, naively, I just figured some sort of financial, misconduct or something, but this
given the payment in conjunction with the NDAs. Yeah.
Right.
And that might be part of a separate thing too. We don't know.
That could be in addition to, but the fact that he's up on sex trafficking and sexual assault charges is for again, like I said, the guy's he's worth billions, and for him to pay out a lawsuit settlement is one thing. For him to actually face what could be significant prison time is a whole other ball game. You're talking about taking away the dude's freedom to basically continue to be a monster, and which I have no doubt he would continue to do. So that's it's probably and given the outpouring of wrestlers from WWE's past who have tweeted out various things. I know I was just looking at a Maria Kanellis tweet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw that earlier as well.
This is something that is a long time coming and might give some sense of justice for his victims, up and down anybody who's come into contact with him. The guy obviously ruled in a despicable way over the WWE and the wrestlers who just wanted to ply their trade.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he is seemingly also being somewhat, as much as you can, erased from WWE's, you can't say from their past, but certainly going forward with their presentation, he's not going to be a focal point in any way, shape, or form.
Nope.
And that's very fitting.
Mm-hmm.
Given the allegations here.
Yeah. So following the Wall Street Journal report, Fightful Select added some additional details, stating, quote, Fightful has spoken with a number of people within the industry, at least one of which claims they know more people involved. A longtime employee of WB says they don't even believe that this lawsuit is, quote, the worst of it, pointing to higher settlements. Fightful can confirm that other potential victims have been identified and contacted by attorneys and media outlets to see if they want to take action. Mm-hmm. Fightful also notes, quote, no talent that we've spoken to have had a wide talent meeting or claim they've been briefed on the situation at hand. Instead, the reactions that we're hearing is that it appears higher-ups want to move on past Vince McMahon and put him in the rear view.
I don't know how today's, wrestlers, the NXT, the newer wrestlers, where they land on all this. I was pretty impressed by Shawn Michaels' media call performance yesterday. I say performance, I'm answering questions in what seemed to be a very considered way, certainly in a much better manner than Triple H did at the Royal Rumble. And I do honestly, sincerely hope that he's sincere and that people who want some assurances can go to him and get that if they're not going to do sort of a wider company or even talent meeting to talk about this stuff. I don't know what legally they would be allowed to discuss or talk about or not. Mm-hmm. And I understand in the real world that matters from a legal standpoint. But you'd like to think that a guy like Shawn Michaels, who really does seem to have taken seriously the role of sort of crafting the future of WWE, and hopefully ensuring that these superstars are doing so and that these wrestlers are doing so in a safe environment, that he would be approachable, and you just hope that they are being kept safe, and that's all you
totally.
For,
and that's in terms of having a talent-wide meeting, regardless if they can speak to anything regarding a lawsuit, criminal investigations, there might be legal things in play that means they can't. But I don't see why they can't make some efforts to go in front of talent, whether it be Triple H, whoever, and reassure them or try to assure them that there's going to be a full reevaluation of whatever safety protocols that might have existed before, and implement ones to better protect everybody who works for WWE, whether it's wrestlers, employees, anybody backstage, anybody in the office.
Yeah.
At the least, you think that would be a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Just if anybody there is giving off the perception that they just want to put their heads down and move past that ain't the way to handle this.
No.
That's not the way to handle this. So
it wasn't. This stuff wasn't just Vince.
Yeah, I know.
It was a culture within the company that was rotten to the core.
Yeah.
And that needs to be addressed. And if you're not going to address that, you can't really move forward.
Yeah.
And if the idea is, well, Vince is gone, let's just focus on what's ahead. That ain't going to cut it.
Yeah,
that ain't going to cut it.
This is much bigger than that. And honestly, this does seem to be, one of the bits in here about, there was a higher settlement. I believe Miss Grant, her payout was supposed to be $3 million, and then Vince stopped paying at $1 million.
There was one that was $7.5 million. Yeah.
And I believe that was for something that happened in the aughts.
Yeah, mid-aughts, I believe.
I don't know what all that would have been, but that's absolutely mind blowing. I mean, I could, and I kind of feel like this stuff. I mean, it feels like this is tip of the iceberg. It really does.
It does. It really does.
And honestly, and it seems likely that a lot more is going to come out. Let's move on to this next quote. I know you got the ad break here, but let's move on to this next quote here because I thought this was really interesting and it speaks to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So in this week's Wrestling Observer Newsletter, my goodness, Dave Meltzer got reaction from some WWE superstars. One, which Meltzer described as one of the biggest company stars of the modern era, stated this. He's the effing cerebral assassin, best politicking dude in history. Literally wormed his way from a green entry-level wrestler into a still average wrestler. Absolute top of the office executive. You think he doesn't pay attention to what's going on around him? Think he did that without knowing every little thing everywhere in that company? Yet somehow this slipped past his radar. The thing about that place is if TKO starts cleaning house, they're going to show up with a bucket and some Lysol, then realize that shit's in the walls, in the floorboards. They're going to have to bring out the sledgehammer because that shit is going to turn into a demolition job, down to the foundation. Sledgehammer pun not intended. I'm not going to speculate on who that is, but I can kind of figure out just from the language there. That is not a difficult one to figure out who that is.
But I feel like they're right. When TKO comes to address the culture situation in WWE offices, you know, it's seemingly based on even this quote, other things. It seems like there's a foundational cultural issue within WWE that needs to be addressed. And to address it, I feel like in the proper way, a lot of people are going to be gone.
I think so. I think so too. And speaking to this, because you know, obviously, this modern day superstar is talking about Triple H. Yeah, right. And and honestly, like, you know, my thing is, I don't care how much I like a guy or like somebody, if they're complicit, they got to be gone. And I got, you know, that's everybody.
Yep.
The interesting thing about Triple H, and I do think it's irresponsible to sort of just throw out accusations and be like, oh, well, he had to have this, that, the other. Given the power structure at WWE, where Vince McMahon was the power in WWE, you know, it's not difficult to speculate, or it's sort of, you can connect the dots. Stephanie leaving when she did might line up with discovering what was going on there in a specific way. Everybody who knows anything about Vince McMahon, down to casual fans of the company, have heard these things about him in a general sense over the years. The specifics are horrifying.
Yes, they are.
And in terms of what people knew and what could have been done about it, I think is going to be the real interesting area in which we get into. Stephanie left. Triple H stayed. They're married. Stands to reason they probably both knew the same thing around the same time. You would think. Again, could be common sense or maybe not. You know, we're not there. We don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't know. One thing that I have observed, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the people that have worked under Triple H seem to really enjoy working under Triple H.
By and large,
Stephanie seemingly was much loved in the company.
Yeah.
And it would be interesting to understand what would be the motivation for somebody to stay, understanding what was going on. Would it be to hopefully enact some change or be some protection for people, for wrestlers? Or is it just, hey, that's just the price of doing business and I don't care? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And those are answers that I think everybody sort of needs to get to continue to be able to work at that company. But if it's the kind of thing where everybody knew, at what point do you sort of draw the line and be like, you could have done something, but this person couldn't have? And if they could have done something, what could have that been? Mm-hmm. You know? So I don't know. There's so many questions here. And it'll be interesting to see where they draw the line at culpability.
Yeah.
At enabling.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's beyond my pay grade. But yeah, I mean, it does seem like this is the kind of thing where, God, who didn't know about the general idea that Vince McMahon, big old creep,
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, there've been accusations against Vince outside of WB. Mentioned the resort.
yeah, yeah,
Previously, there was a one when he was in, I think, a massage place in Boca Raton, Florida.
yeah, right, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
That stuff has been out there, and it's
been.
like if it's out there for a couple of jokers like you and me to read about it, and everybody else to read about it,
Yep.
then you got to ask yourself, okay, the people on the inside, it stands to reason they would know more,
Yeah.
and what could have been done.
Yeah. Exactly.
Um,
Meltzer had more in the newsletter, stating, quote, one company star noted to us that reading the lawsuit was emotionally scarring, noting that the sad fact is that everyone in the company was striving for Vince's love and approval, and how devastating reading the suit was to have thought that and worked for someone who in the end didn't care about their talents. This is a quote from one of the talents of WWE. Vince made so many of us feel small and awful. We all had to obey his abuse in order to keep our jobs.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that we heard story after story of that. Even down to Bray Wyatt.
Yeah.
When him and Vince were at creative odds, Vince would call him out on him being overweight in Vince's estimation.
Mm-hmm.
That's all, and that's on one end, that's on sort of the nicer end of the spectrum. Evidently, was having to endure that. And that's how you wield power. It's like when he is the end all be all in the company, in the industry, that is the end all be all for many. You can go to New Japan, you can go to TNA, even before AEW is a thing, but you can go to AEW. But it's like you should be able to find employment or contracting work with WWE and not have to go through that.
Yeah.
And towards the end, a lot of people wouldn't. FTR wouldn't. Sasha Banks wouldn't. Eric Young wouldn't.
Yep.
Yeah, it's completely disheartening, and hopefully, when all this stuff comes out and whatever end game there will be real accountability here.
Yeah.
For him and everybody involved, and if they got to get into the foundations of the place, so be it.
Exactly. Yep. It's what's got to be done. Meltzer also here says it was also noted that there was a lot of trauma among the women as this went down, with the fear it'll get crazier as more women come forward.
Yeah. Like I said, I feel like this is the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some real. There's going to be some real. There's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot coming up. I'll just say that.
Yeah, it kind of feels that way, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm, it does. It really does. Anyways, Larson, let's go ahead and pay some bills. What do you say?
All right. This episode of Going in Raw is sponsored by BetterHelp. Steve, a lot of people might think that relationships need to be easy to be right. But some of the best relationships are those where both parties put in the work to make them great. I know that some of my most important relationships were strained back in my mid-20s when I was dealing with severe anxiety, but therapy allowed me to learn the skills I needed to better cope with my anxiety and help me face the challenge of mending those relationships. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try.
BetterHelp is completely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited for your schedule. All you got to do to get started is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. Then you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge.
So become your own soulmate, whether you're looking for one or not. Visit BetterHelp.com/raw today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/raw.
All right. Let's move on here to John Laurenitis, the other individual named in the lawsuit filed last week. He made his first public statements about the allegations against him through his lawyer, Edward Brennan. Brennan issued a statement to Vice News, which, quote, appeared to corroborate central claims in the suit, while also describing Laurenitis as a victim. Vice followed up with Brennan on clarification, to which Brennan responded, Mr. Laurenitis denies the allegations in the misguided complaint and will be vigorously defending these charges in court. not the media. Like the plaintiff, Mr. Laurenitis is a victim in this case, not a predator. The truth will come out. Read the allegations. Read the federal statute. Power, control, employment supervisory capacity, dictatorial sexual demands with repercussions if not met. Count how many times in the complaint Vince exerts control over both of them. End quote. So the interesting thing about this quote right here is Mr. Laurenitis denies the allegations in the misguided complaint and will be vigorously defending these charges in court, but then seems to corroborate that the stuff happened, just Vince was forcing him to do it.
Yeah, that seems to be the defense here, yes.
For my eyes, it seems like bullshit.
Yeah, it does. It seems like Laurenitis realizes that they got him dead to rights.
And he's going to try to take Vince down. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, though, that being said, I don't know, like, that defense won't work. You know, I mean, it sort of depends, I guess, on how good the lawyer is. But
well, it also depends, I would imagine, if they can find evidence somehow supporting their case, too.
Well, and that's the thing. He was Vince's employee.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Again, this is just one of those things that'll be kind of interesting to understand. Okay, well, if the case is Vince made me do this stuff, I don't know. If there's evidence to suggest that, it could be potentially an effective defense. I mean, he was employed by Vince, and Vince was the guy with the power. So I don't know. I mean, honestly, it seems like bullshit. We've heard so many stories about Laurenitis and seems like kind of a shitheel and seems like kind of a dullard. But yeah, I guess that's sort of we'll see what happens with that one.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much involving all this from both a civil and criminal perspective that it has to unfold in the respective courts of law.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And yeah, there just seems to be so much involved in this beyond what we already know.
Yeah.
Based on the lawsuit, based on prior reporting.
Yeah.
That it seems like there's going to be a lot.
It does.
A lot.
Does. Yeah.
Because this
isn't the thing where, like, okay, if it's just the lawsuit, then it could be settled and it could be, sealed, basically. But with criminal charges, that shit goes unless there's a plea deal. But if there's a plea deal, it would be on the part they're going to get somebody.
Yeah.
And if there's a plea deal, it's going to be Laurenitis. And for Laurenitis to take Vince down, he's going to spill the beans on everything. Like, if you want that deal, whatever that deal might be, you have to spill the beans on everybody.
Yep.
So I don't know that there's even a way that this won't completely spill the beans on everybody.
You think one way or the other it would have to happen. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's going to be eye-opening. It's definitely going to be eye-opening. Let me ask you this. This is a tough one. I saw somebody reference this. I didn't listen to the actual episode myself. But apparently Jeff Jarrett on his My World podcast with Conrad talks about it. And I believe Conrad had said something like, I'm sort of struggling with being a fan.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah.
I have no idea if we have that in our questions coming up, but I thought I would bring it up here with you. There was a response on I think one of the Wrestle Juice threads. I don't know. We put up so many threads where somebody had said, one thing you can consider is when you think about just how much the business has passed Vince by and how wrestling in 2024, while it might have its origins in what Vince McMahon did and accomplished.
Yeah.
It's no longer a product of Vince McMahon. It has evolved way past him. And the evidence of that is just how out of touch he has truly been, creatively speaking, over the last 5 to 10 years.
Definitely, yeah.
And you can even go back 20 years to see just how completely out of touch he was. There was a period during the Attitude Era, maybe some, ruthless aggression stuff. And there's like flashes here and there. But in terms of understanding his audience and understanding what pro wrestling can be, and I think we're still learning what it can be without him. Mm-hmm. One thing you can take away from that is that his contributions are maybe overrated. He took it to a certain place, got it to a certain place, honestly, by stealing a bunch of ideas.
Yeah.
And, it evolved past him, past a point that he can comprehend. So maybe it's not as if we're all, celebrating something that he gifted us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. It's going to take a while before the pro wrestling business isn't so closely identified with Vince McMahon. WWE can do what they can to kind of make no reference to him, to a degree, erase him from their history. But as long as WWE is the brand name, at least for the short term, as long as WWE is the brand name of the pro wrestling business, people associate WWE with Vince McMahon because he was the one that was in control of the company for so long. I think when we first reported or talked about when the lawsuit was announced and filed about struggling with one's fandom of, I guess, pro wrestling in general, but specifically WWE, following that. And there's been a lot of instances where WWE specifically has said to its fan base, you got to compartmentalize if you want to follow our product. Yeah, right. Yeah. Years back when they got into the deal with the Saudi Arabian government for the shows. Yeah. For a while, we didn't cover those because we didn't feel good about it. We didn't feel right doing it. Yeah. We eventually decided, all right, we'll start doing charity streams to go along with those shows. And every fan is going to have a point where they'll say, just not willing to do that anymore. Yeah. There's a portion of the fan base that'll follow the product regardless of what happens outside of what they see on their TV screens or happens in the ring or in the arena when they're there. But every fan's got to make that determination. At which point, is this too much for me to compartmentalize to try to enjoy the product that I see in front of me, whether it be in person or on TV? Yeah. And I know part of WWE moving forward, though, is, as we mentioned, is addressing and dealing with the culture that existed when Vince was in power, which could still, to a certain degree, persist if people there who were complicit in what was going on are still employed there. And until they address that, it's going to be hard. We talked about the stain that Vince is going to leave on WWE. And that stain is going to last a long, long, long time. Sure, yeah. And I feel like a lot of fans, the only way they're really going to start, maybe try to enjoy the product again, is not only Vince being gone, but addressing the cultural issue within the company. Yeah. And assuring people who work for the company, whether it's in the office, backstage, talent, things are going to be different going forward. We're going to employee and talent safety is first and foremost. We're going to run this like a professional organization. Yeah. Going forward. Until that happens, I wonder if there's going to be a portion of the fan base that's going to be on the edge about, well, should I continue to follow this? Should I not? Or at least not be quite as passionate about it. Exactly. Do I want to give my hard-earned money to this company when I find so much of what they've done in the past, now specifically with the Vince lawsuit, so objectionable, so disgusting? Yeah. And, that's on a fan-by-fan basis. They got to make their own decision about that. Yeah. We're in a position where this is what we cover for a living. Yeah, right. And so we've had to compartmentalize a lot. Sure. And I mentioned the Saudi Arabia shows. That's just one instance of it. So, it's not an easy answer. It's up to the individual. It's a subjective thing. Yeah. Yeah. And I think from my perspective, I try to approach it as I'm a fan of pro wrestling and have been for a very long time. Mm-hmm. Now that this is essentially my job, so I do to make a living, I have to approach this as objectively as I can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When it comes to news, when it comes to what's going on the shows. And for the purposes of what we do here, for a lot of it, I kind of have to set my fandom aside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And try to look at things as objectively as possible. But even that's not easy water to navigate sometimes.
Yeah. Again, like you said, I think it is sort of up to the people. To me, we've said this a lot in the past. We're here for the performers,
not the companies. Yes,
we appreciate the performers, not the company. Appreciate what they bring to the table. Appreciate what creative brings to the table. Now, for obviously a long time, that creative was Vince McMahon. And if you recall, especially for the past 5 years or so, oh no, Carl Weathers passed.
Yeah, I saw that. That's a bummer.
Oh, that's sad. For the past, I don't know, 5 years or so, maybe more now that I think about it, closer to 10 years. While Vince was there, product wasn't very good. And, we openly complained about that and criticized over and over again. I mean, it really did. It was a sea change once Triple H took over. Like, I know the product didn't change to, that hardcore, but it kind of did. And now we can appreciate the craft. We give Triple H the benefit of the doubt when it comes to creative anyways. To me, it was never about, celebrating Vince McMahon, in the same way that, appreciating, the current or the modern day language of cinema as existed for the past 100 years wasn't, a celebration of Birth of a Nation and D.W. Griffith. And so, yeah, I think celebrating the wrestlers, I think, is totally okay.
Yeah.
I think celebrating the writers that work there, is totally okay. Depending on how things shake out, we'll just go day by day, I guess. Yeah. I wanted to give a shout out really quick. Arthur N9 was the one who sort of brought up the Jeff Jarrett thing on the Wrestle Juice thread. So thanks, Arthur.
I mean, to be honest, it's something that I have wrestled with since the announcement of the lawsuit is, and like I said, I try to be as objective as I can when approaching this from a vantage point of this is our jobs. Mm-hmm, But I've been watching pro wrestling since I was a kid in the 1980s.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And so the fan in me has tried to wrestle with the allegations from the lawsuit and how that can coexist with being a fan of WWE's product, and it's not an easy discussion to have with oneself.
Well, it's interesting. You said something, I don't know, last week or earlier this week, when somebody had asked us, maybe it was on Friendo Cast coming up, are you able to separate the art from the artist? I don't know. Yes. We had that conversation. I don't know what it was on.
It was the tail end of one of the shows this week.
Okay. And I one aspect of what you brought up, I really appreciated, and that was if the despicable elements of an artist informs the art in the same way that, like, when you go back and look at a lot of the clips of Vince McMahon, the character Mr. McMahon being despicable and knowing that was absolutely informed by the person he is.
1,000%. Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I'm not even patting myself on the back for this one, but I remember being disgusted by the bark like a dog stuff. I've joked a lot about the live sex show, but finding out, Lita was on like Renee Paquette's podcast, I think a couple of years ago, and said that, she was forced to do that under threat of being fired. Yeah.
Apparently Edge, too, said, no, don't do it.
Yeah.
To Vince, we're not going to do this. Yeah.
Yeah. And that disgusts me, and so, yeah, man, you want to know these performers are being taken care of.
Exactly. And that's first and foremost. Yeah.
It's horrifying to know that, like, for all this time, they were just living under constant fear of, like, this could get bad. I can get fired or worse.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Like you said, it's up to everybody to make that determination for themselves.
It is. It absolutely is. And I'm happy you mentioned that the idea of supporting the talents, and celebrating the talent who are out there day in and day out, putting their body on the line for our entertainment, supporting them, and not so much the company. Going forward, am I going to feel good about going to WWE show? Probably not.
Yeah.
If I choose to do it, which I might not. These are the discussions that I've had it with myself, and this isn't the first time it's happened.
Yeah.
And again, the job we have is report the news. We talk about what happened on the shows, and as much as I can, I try to take the wrestling fan of me not completely out, but I try to set that aside to talk about what I think. Like when we criticize the show, part of me from a fan perspective might be like, "Oh, that's fine," but I can look at it and be like, that's just not well-constructed television,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, going forward, it's going to be an ongoing thing. There's a lot to unfold yet.
Yeah.
So, we'll continue doing this from a professional standpoint. This will be our jobs. If it gets to the point where I just absolutely can't stand watching the product for whatever reason, that's a big bridge to cross when we get there. But it's just not an easy question to answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially from our vantage point, considering this is our livelihood as well.
Sure. Yeah. That's
I feel
interesting.
like I stumbled through that, but hopefully there's a point there.
No, you did great. No, it's interesting you talk about. It's a whole different conversation. Your approach to removing yourself as fan. Pretty much everything I talk about is informed from my fandom.
Yeah.
Like I make no bones about that. I'm totally happy with that.
Well, I guess I just try to separate it to a degree because that is a whole separate conversation. But
I think I'm open. I'm open with that. Like when you just said, as a fan, what do I care? But objectively speaking, is it good television?
Yeah.
That is that's a good example where, being a fan also of, well-constructed narratives sort of comes into and decides to enter into the conversation as well.
I'll say this. Before we started doing this for a living, or even, back maybe we were doing it once a month, when I can put on an episode of Raw or SmackDown, just sit and watch, maybe have it partially in the background. This is interesting to me. I could fast forward through it.
Sure.
I can approach it strictly from, am I enjoying this or not? Is this piquing my interest? Is this strengthening my fandom of this particular thing or not?
Yeah.
But now going into it from a perspective where we have an hour per TV show of wrestling to break down the stories, the characters, what happens in the ring. Yeah, I guess part of that is informed by fandom because there's things that I like and there's things I don't like.
Sure, yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like to a certain degree, maybe not completely, but a certain degree, I have to remain somewhat objective in terms of how I approach things because...
Oh, yeah.
10 years ago or 15 years ago, if I watch wrestling, I'd be like, oh, this is fine, whatever. But now approaching it, if we approach every episode of Raw or SmackDown or Dynamite, it's like, yeah, that's fine. There's just not a show to be had. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think I know what you mean. Yeah.
There's a certain level of objectivity that I have to have looking at and part of it, actually, I'll tell you this, is taking the notes.
Yeah.
Is because I can't be a passive viewer of wrestling when I have to engage in level of taking notes.
It's like trying to watch The Godfather and take notes.
Yeah, and write the script for it at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so it forces me to engage at a different level than I would otherwise.
I mean, I see what you're saying. Like criticism, I guess we're having this conversation now. Criticism does exist separate from fandom. And there's absolutely,
sometimes they're not totally.
Yeah. And I think because I feel like we're kind of on the same page. It's just two different outlooks of the same thing. Maybe
I think
that feel different because it's like I'm not a fan of everything on WWE, but I can objectively, to the best of my ability, critique it and find value or lack of value in that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a bit different than fandom. I understand.
That's what, that's what I'm trying to say, I guess.
Sure.
Like I said, I feel like my explanation was clunky, but that's kind of the point I'm trying to get across.
Whatever. This is a clunky ass episode. This is not, it's horrible to have to talk about this stuff. And, I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, when I woke up this morning and I think it was like in a CNN alert or something, or Wall Street Journal alert, and, that Vince is under federal investigation for this stuff. And I was like, all right, well, I got to put my big boy pants on today and try to come across as, informative and insightful, because, I can't do a silly, dog and pony show, which is what I prefer to do. I think you prefer to do that too,
Yeah. I mean,
it's more fun to critique narrative wrestling television.
It is.
Than it is to discuss the tragedies of real life. I don't think that is a shock to anybody.
It is, but I feel like we have a responsibility to do that. And I don't want to run away from that responsibility.
Exactly. And we can't. Like, we owe too much to our audience to do that.
And I think to a degree that's the objectivity aspect of it too. Is personally it's not comfortable, again, not complaining, but not fun or comfortable having these discussions, but they're necessary. And whatever anxiety I feel about it, I have to, best I can, even though I'm a really anxious person, remove myself from that and be like, this is a responsibility we have to our audience to discuss these things. So I'm going to do it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Don't get to have fun every day.
Nope.
Well, I got some good news. We can answer some questions now, Larson.
All right, let's do it.
All right. John and Alistair voice. John says, if you were to make new merch about one joke from the entirety of your online careers, what would it be?
Just one. Is it one we've already done? Because that's an easy answer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably be, hey, you're not me.
Probably, hey, you're not me. Yeah. I'm thinking I'm going to do the next merch line that we do.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to debut for the next week of Champions. And it's going to be called Roots of Friendo.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
I'm looking forward to it, man. Some of their designs are awesome, and
They're fantastic.
Can't wait to pay homage.
Exactly.
Let's see here. Jesse Helsia says, if you won the lottery, what is it's like Maggie sent me like the Mega Millions thing the other day, or the jackpot, whatever it is. It's up to a lot of money.
Really? Do I have to go to the liquor store up the street and
yeah, dude.
Put $20 down?
Oh, here it is. Let's see. What's the next one?
Usually it's on Fridays and Tuesdays.
It's up to 206 million.
Oh, all right.
Which, like, yeah, it's not a billion. I would be kind of disappointed. Like, wouldn't that be whack? Like, some Powerballs are like a billion.
Yeah.
And then it's like you have to settle for after taxes 100 million.
Oh, darn.
I know, right? Like, I feel like I'd be cheated. I'd be like, yeah, how much did you win? Only after taxes 100 million. Oh, you're not one of them $1 billion winners? No.
I just feel like I would actually kind of prefer just being $100 million winner, because I feel like the level of attention you get being $1 billion winner is that much more overwhelming than it would be. Because, like, you could win the $200 million jackpot and just kind of slide under the radar a little bit,
Yeah. Lots of people I feel have like $100 million.
Whereas if you win the $1 billion, you got to go out there for the full press conference to get the huge fake check.
Oh, dude, yeah.
I'd
wear a wig and some Groucho glasses.
I know, you feel like you got to disguise yourself so people don't come after you trying to get some of that money. No, give me the $100 billion. You can't put a price on peace of mind, man.
What would you do if you scored the $1 billion one? I'd probably just meddle in elections.
Wow. I would try to do something to make this planet
the Friendo pack.
Try to do something to make this planet habitable for my children and their children.
Well, you've got $1 billion; they'll be fine.
I don't know if you can like colonize another planet with just $1 billion, Steve.
You could, but you could find like a decent island that'll be safe from climate change. I think.
Oh, because it'll all be underwater, man.
It's not gonna happen in 100 years.
I don't know, man.
Let's see here. Yeah, I do meddle because here's the thing: you meddle in elections, and then you can vote. You can get in. You can pay for people to be in office. That will benefit that are not climate change.
I feel like you're going to have much deeper pockets than $1 billion to affect that level of change.
Oh, I don't know, because there's like, well, PACs don't have limits, do they? Well, it's corrupt, the whole system.
You got that right, it is. Thanks,
let's
Citizens
just move
United.
On. Well, okay, but yeah, I know, exactly. The question is, would we still do this?
We want Powerball? For fun, maybe. We might just do pay-per-view watch-alongs or something.
The answer is this. No.
No.
Fucking of course not.
Nope. You never
not
see me again.
Chance. Exactly. Yeah, no.
This is what I'd want to do. If I don't want opulent stuff. I don't want a huge house. I want a home that's comfortable. I just want everybody to have a room, and I have a office to do music stuff if I want to. And if I had a lot of money, I'd build a full court basketball hoop in my backyard indoors. Hardwood.
You know
and
where
we'd be playing basketball every day.
Hey, you know what you could do?
What?
Because I might steal this idea now. You could build that much money, a hardwood indoor place. What theme would you give it? Like, what would you try to replicate?
Oh, that's
like
interesting.
Where the Celtics used to play, like what the Boston Gardens, whatever
Boston
it is.
Garden,
No. The Forum, The
Matadome.
I think that's still around, isn't it?
I think it is.
I think it's still there. I would say this: if you want to find Steven Larson, will be courtside at half the Kings basketball games. Will be probably front row hard cam at a lot of WWE events, assuming they clean house.
Yeah, I'm not spending my money on their tickets now.
So yeah, you still be able to find us.
We'll be sitting courtside the Kings game, vomiting all over ourselves.
Ideally, with that much money, we can do that and get away with it.
Timor here asked, when Punk comes back, should he win the Rumble?
Oh, I talked about that a little bit on something WrestleJuice thing I did.
Yeah,
that's a sketchy situation because
he might get hurt again.
Yeah, here's the thing. This is what I think you do. Let's say he gets back for SummerSlam, right? Let's say Drew McIntyre is still the world heavyweight champion. I don't think that's a terrible situation.
No, I don't think it is either.
He comes back. He has a face-to-face with Drew. Drew is kind of sneaky, and somebody else sort of, sidetracks Punk. Because you don't do that match until Mania.
Yeah.
So you have SummerSlam until Mania to figure out, is his body going to hold together? You give him a Roman-type schedule. He only has to wrestle, let's say, 4 times between SummerSlam and Mania.
Yeah.
Then you do that match at Mania. And if by the time the finishing sequence begins, he hasn't fucked himself up, sure. Have him win the title at Mania, but not via the Rumble. No. You got to protect the shit out of that because it is a great moment. And then, hey, you know what? If by the end of the match, he's, in the finishing giving a GTS to Drew McIntyre. If he rips something, pins him 1, 2, 3, the next day he could vacate. It's fine.
Exactly. He had his moment. That's what he came back for.
Yeah.
Blake Whitehouse says, given how Braun Breaker, has a clean pin over Gunther, would he be a reasonable candidate to dethrone Gunther? No. If anything, Gunther needs to beat Braun Breaker to get his win back.
I agree with that. Yeah.
No. If anybody in NXT that could potentially dethrone Gunther, it's Ilya. Given their history, it's got to be Ilya.
Yeah, I've come around to that. I don't want it to be like an open challenge and he shows up and does it, though.
You need to build to it.
Ilya needs to crawl. He needs to set his sights. Doesn't even want the world title. He just wants Gunther's title.
Yep.
I took it from you before.
Don't do it again.
Let's see here. Oh, here we go. Forbes says, whose bathroom did Steve destroy the last time he was at that 2K event to burn your bridges with 2K? I mean, it was the Performance Center. Maybe I went in there and one of the 2K executives, I don't know any of their names or the media people.
Yeah.
Maybe they were in the bathroom and they heard just an explosion, emerge from my insides. Uh-huh. And they were like, this guy is beyond vile, uninvited.
We can't have him back.
Good Lord. He might give us something. This sounds so horrible. It sounds like he's going to give us some sort of, explosive, lower intestine,
gastrointestinal issue.
Permanently, he's got some sort of Mars plague in his lower intestines.
Yeah.
So keep him out of here. Yeah, I'm not happy about that, though. I'll be honest with you. Not getting an invite. Our my GM draft does the numbers it does. We don't get an invite. You get out of here with that.
Maybe if
I wouldn't even go.
If you were invited, you'd snub him, huh?
I'd write a nice email back. Sorry, man, but you're not our jam. We like to play, but that's kind of it. We're not creators. And then they're like, "Oh, okay, cool, thanks." But thank you for the invite was what I would say.
Yeah.
You were correct in inviting us.
I feel like every time we talk about it, just more and more assures that it's never going to happen ever again.
Oh man, fuck them, dude. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, oh yeah, we're not gonna get a free game. What am I gonna miss out on? A free game? You know, 50,000 on our draft episode. We can't get an invite. We were there before. Everybody else gets to come back. We don't get to come back.
I don't have an answer, man.
Luke Owen gets to go, and I don't get to go. They shouldn't even fly us out to the U.S. one. They should fly us out to the U.K. one, be honest with you, for all these years of being snubbed.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
Matt Olson here says, AEW over the past couple of years has been very hit or miss. I feel like when AEW was at its best is when the Bucks were part of creative and writing the show.
The hell? When was that?
Yeah, I don't know when that was.
Isn't that now? That's their gimmick now.
2019? Do you think it was a bad idea to move them from creative? And if so, would it be smart to bring them back into creative? If not, who can they use to help with creative?
I don't know if that was ever the case, man.
Well, I think in 2019, it was a situation where Cody and Kenny and the Young Bucks were more involved in creative, and then Tony Khan's like, the show's no good. I'm going to take control of creative. That's the story, you know?
Yeah, right, yeah.
But as far as I know, it was like since early 2020.
Yeah.
Tony Khan has been like, no, I'm steering the ship creatively.
Yeah, man. I don't know. I think that they had some good stuff. You know, it's funny because like the Continental Classic was really cool, and then as soon as that's done, it's sort of like aimless again. They need to know how to focus your shit, man.
I know.
Coach John Pliskin says, what horror movie franchise do you think you'd be able to survive best in?
So we got Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, no, not that one.
You got to sleep.
I love sleep. I just stay away from Camp Crystal Lake.
Yeah, there you go.
So Friday the 13th.
Well, I guess you can't go into space either because Jason went to space at one point.
I don't want to go to space. I like the idea of space, but space is terrifying.
That's what William Shatner said.
Yeah. Well,
so it made him sad.
It made him sad?
Yeah. He said he went up and looking at the planet made him sad because how horribly we're treating our home.
Yeah, well, that's true too. I was just thinking like how
the vastness of space.
Well, if you try to leave your spacecraft without like a proper suit,
you're done for. Yeah,
you'll just get crushed. You'll implode and freeze, and everything bad happens to you. That's crazy, you know. Anyways. Shats Production says, do you guys think big moments from the WWE's history involving Vince will be erased? For example, his commentary. Bro, no, man. So here's the thing. You can't erase all everything that he did.
No,
you can't. He's everywhere. He's like a virus.
Yeah.
However, I watched in advance of doing this episode today. I did a modicum of research because I was kind of curious because I thought we'd have this kind of question come up. And I went back and I looked at probably in my mind anyways, one of the biggest sort of changeovers in WWF history. And that's WrestleMania 14. Mm-hmm. It was the first fully Attitude Era, like fully developed Attitude Era episode. WrestleMania.
Yeah.
It was the beginning of the Austin era, et cetera, et cetera. I was kind of curious, given that WWE loves nostalgia, back then, how much in the intro did they emphasize tradition? And they really used the intro to sort of play up the idea that this is a new era of sorts. Mm-hmm. And they did air some clips. They aired like a shot of like Andre. They aired like a shot, I think a general shot of like Liberace at the first WrestleMania. And then it cut to like DX, it said, but now this new generation is blah, 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 blah. And then they were talking about Austin and they showed a lineage of the title. You know, the belt worn by Andre Hogan, which is weird with Andre Hogan and San Martino.
Yeah.
And it was weird. And then it said, but now a new Steve Austin is going to blah, blah, blah. And so they still, but they didn't but it was more using tradition or the past to inform just how much things have changed.
Yeah.
And I feel like going forward, WWE should really just focus on the now and the future and not indulge in this is what came before. We all know what came before.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to revel in that. We don't need to go back in time. I don't know how, like, whenever there's like a Super Bowl intro, I don't know how much they usually play clips from the Super Bowls past. I think they probably sometimes do, but I don't remember.
Maybe on like the anniversary Super Bowls.
Yeah, right.
But for the most part, obviously they have the 2-3 hour pregame show, but that's mostly analysis and like the human interest stories going into the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Every once in a while. I remember one time, and I'm upset with myself, we went to trivia and there was a question about this. Watching one of the Super Bowls where they actually had a thing, I only remember this afterwards, about how the first Super Bowl was in LA because it benefited the TV presentation of it. Because even then, in the late 60s, LA was the entertainment capital of, I guess, the world, the United States, whatever.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. So they'll have, archival footage in that respect, but very rarely that I recall that they have like an opening video package of great moments the Super Bowl's past. They might. It's entirely possible.
I just think with WWE, it's not necessary to revel in the past.
No.
You don't need to do that. We all know WrestleMania's been around for a long time. You don't need to revel in it. Don't look at the past. Look at the future.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But no, I don't think it's going to be possible. They might. I mean, it is entirely possible. It is entirely possible. I don't think for a second, let's say, for example, if the Peacock deal expires and Netflix takes over.
Yeah.
I don't think for a second that they're not going to want to have the backlog of WrestleManias.
Yeah.
And probably all pay-per-views, I would think.
Yeah.
It wouldn't shock me if they were like, we don't need every episode of Raw. We can just have, best ofs or some shit like that,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I don't know where the library's going to end up going. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know either. It could be a situation where they put, like disclaimers at the beginning of episodes.
Every fucking episode before, 2020 should probably have a disclaimer, of some sort.
Yeah. Steve somewhere here says, is there an undercard performer that you generally love watching? I think Angelico puts on fantastic technical displays. I loved him since Lucha Underground. I guess depends on one's definition of undercard wrestler. I guess maybe someone who's never really dabbled in the main event.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Well, see, the thing is, AEW's had a lot of undercard wrestlers in their main event, but I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
I know like Raven was world champ in ECW, but I was not really aware of ECW when Raven was in WCW.
Yeah, Raven is if Raven qualifies, that's a great answer. Yeah, I loved Raven. I thought he was awesome.
Yeah, Raven was great.
Mm-hmm.
Blake Whitehouse here says, did you see Mustafa Ali announced he's going to be going for the TNA X Division Championship? I saw that he's going to have some merch that's tracksuits. Mustafa Ali branded tracksuits.
We need tracksuits. I think we could do. Maybe we can do tracks. I'll have to look at the fourth our merch thing. Let's see here. Chad Knows More says, should we stop expecting great storytelling from AEW and accept that maybe they're trying to present their product more like a throwback to the territory days when the matches sold themselves and existed independently from an overarching narrative? That's not what they did in the territory days, though. Mm-mm. If you think they didn't have stories in the territory days, you're absolutely crazy. I know, because I spent a lot of time on Twitch watching territory wrestling, and they 1,000%. Bro, most territory wrestling is featured name versus jobber. The vast majority is featured name versus jobber. And then you'd get people milling about in the studio. They 1,000%. Where do you think Vince McMahon stole storytelling from? He stole it from the territories.
Yep. He's looking at Memphis and other territories. Be like, I'm going to start doing this.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm not saying that might not exist, but I don't know. Most modern wrestling involves storytelling. I don't know very many. Like Lucha Underground was mostly storytelling, and then they had really cool matches.
Yeah.
I mean, even New Japan, they've got stories being told.
Yeah.
They always have stories being told.
Yep.
So no, I kind of feel like should we? I don't expect great storytelling. I expect some amount of attempting to tell stories, and me seeing that there's some effort being put into that, and not just trying to book your show until the next. Let's just get to the next pay-per-view because it'll be good.
I know. I mean, it seems like so much of AEW's booking philosophy is, hey, let's motivate a match. As opposed to getting people emotionally involved in that match. And that's the difference, I feel like, is anybody could be a booker, a wrestling booker, and be like, all right, brief thing to instigate a small feud to book to motivate a match. Match happens on to the next thing.
Yeah, right, yeah.
But it's finding ways to tell stories to get your audience emotionally invested in the outcome. That's the storytelling of pro wrestling.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Is to get people watching your matches emotionally invested on who wins and who loses.
I thought there's a way to do that in a sports-based presentation. The Continental Classic did that. I thought the Continental Classic did that really, really well.
I thought so,
and
too.
then you see exactly what happens. As soon as they don't have something that has some structure to it, they have a hard time finding narrative structure without a gimmick. And a gimmick is fine. If you have a gimmick, that's totally fine. And the Continental Classic was that. It was a great gimmick for them to use to tell stories based on those matches. And I thought they did a really, really good job with that.
Yeah.
But then as soon as that's done, they sort of fall into and look, I know they've got some injuries to some high-profile names, but you got to learn how to pivot. You really do. I just want them to put on some cool to do some cool shit. That's all. I want some focus. You know,
it does. It seems like a company by and large without vision.
Yeah,
like to certain degrees, they want to have a presentation that's different from WWE, but they want the production to be very much up to the standards of WWE. And not to say those two things can't coexist; they can, but it feels like they're not all heading to the same direction.
I don't need it. I don't need it to look and feel like WWE. It can look and feel like New Japan. I love how New Japan looks. It does not look anything like WWE. It doesn't. But the stars feel like stars there.
Yeah.
They do. They really do.
They do.
The presentation is not like WWE, but their big names feel like big names. Their storylines really matter there. And I only watch them a handful of times a year, and I can tell that.
Yep.
Let's see here. If we'll end on this one. AJ Otani says, "What would you like? What would you like to see GM Ava bring to NXT? I want to see her take NXT out of that venue,
Performance Center. Yes, we can agree on that one.
That's what I want.
On the road.
On the road. Anyways." We're going to go on the road now. Well, not on the road. We're going to go off the internet road.
Yes.
Internet superhighway. What do they call it? Information superhighway.
Information superhighway, yeah.
It's Friday. I'm fucking out of here, man.
Me too.
My brain is fried from talking about all this doom and gloom.
Same.
So that's going to do it for the show. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Appreciate it. Till next time, we'll see you around.
Goodbye.